Hi guys, James at RampantLionReviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are going to head down to France once again, and we're going to have a look at a beer from another brewery that I've never tried anything from before. So these guys seem to have been around for quite a little while. They've got some really interesting traditional styles of beer, and the one that we're going to have a look at today is a style that I very much enjoy, but it's not a style that I get to review on the channel all that often. So I'm quite curious to see what this one has in store for us, and it's always nice to introduce new French breweries here on the channel as well, because we don't get to review all that much French beer, unfortunately, even though there's some really good breweries out there. So yeah, curious to see how this one turns out. Fingers crossed it's another good beer. Hopefully it makes for an interesting review, and I hope that you guys enjoy my take on this one as well. So yeah, for this review then, we are going to go to a little place called Arques, which is in the Pas-de-Calais region in the northern part of France, and we're going to have a look at my first beer from Brasserie Goudale. So this particular beer is called Landelin Blanc. It comes in at 6.5% ABV, and as the name tells you, this one is a blonde ale. So yeah, really curious to see what this one has in store for us. Probably my favourite blonde ale would be Leffe. You know, that's a kind of go-to beer for me, if you like. So when I saw this one in Systembolaget, I thought, you know, I have to have a go at this and see what it's all about. And the bonus was that it was French as well, and as I say, not too many French beers on the go up here in Sweden. But this one was released as part of the Tillfälligt temporary assortment, I believe, sometime in April of 2021. So I've had this beer in the fridge for a little while actually. I've been meaning to get around to this one. Scorching hot day outside, you can't really go wrong with a kind of lovely Belgian style blonde ale, I guess we could say, or a French blonde ale as it is in this case. But yeah, certainly looking forward to it. Let's see how we get on with this one. So, as always with my reviews then, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I'll hopefully be able to do in the future from Brasserie Goudale. This is the very first time I'm trying one of their beers, as I mentioned, but there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The whole channel, of course, has a geography-based tagging system, so you can go into the homepage and search for beer based on country, city, state, county, province, prefecture, whatever it is you happen to be interested in. Do check out the playlist of beers from different countries. There is one there for all the French beers that I've reviewed for you. That's being added to quite gradually, because we are getting a few of the more kind of French craft beers up here in Scandinavia these days, which I'm very glad to see. Hopefully we get some more of the traditional ones as well. But yeah, I wish I could add to that list a little bit more frequently. But as always, please do get in touch and let me know some of the other beers and breweries that you guys would like to see me review. It's always great to hear from you guys that are watching the videos, and the support that you show the channel is hugely appreciated. But anyway, on to my brewery notes then, to tell you a little bit about Brasserie Goudale. And I do apologise in advance for any bad French pronunciations, because it's been a very long time since I studied French at school. But anyway, Brasserie Goudale are based in Arques, which is in Haut-des-France, in the Pas-de-Calais region in the northern part of the country, quite close to Lille in fact. Lille is the biggest the biggest city, I guess, within the vicinity of this place. But this brewery was known as Brasserie de Gayant until 1995. So the brewery was originally based in Douai, which is in the same region, and the symbol of this town is a giant, or Gayant, as you would say in French. But the Gayant family are the giant, his wife Marie Cagenot, and their three children, Jaco, Philon and Binbin. But basically in Douai there is a festival on the first weekend of every July where they march these big statue things through the towns, and you know, this brewery was named as a kind of tribute to that, if you like. So the brewery itself was founded back in 1919 as the Grande Brasserie des Enfants de Gayant, the Grand Brewery of the Giant's Children, if you want to translate it into English. But they only sold their beer very locally, within a few kilometres of the brewery. But they continued to operate over the next kind of couple of decades. But then in 1955 the brewery was purchased by Jean-Pierre d'Aubray, at which time it was producing 26,000 hectolitres of beer per year, and it employed around 40 people. But over the following decades they continued to grow, and in 1982 they started to produce more speciality beers, the first being the Bière du Démon, which then and then in 1994 they also launched the Goudale brand as well, which is what this beer is released under. But later on in 2000 they purchased Brasserie Jean d'Arc, and it renamed it Brasserie Grande d'Orge, and this entity launched the brands La Gayante, La 70 20, La Tripa Secrète de Moine and Belzebuth as well. So these guys have released quite a few different lines of specialty beers, and this is something that you do see in Belgium as well. You'll have like a parent brewery who release a lot of different lines actually. You know, Van Steenberg, for example, with Golden Draak and Pirat and all these kind of things. So it seems to be that this is another sort of parent company that releases lots of different lines of beer. But in 2010, the company was purchased by André Paqueur, and the two breweries were officially merged before the brewing operations were moved to Arques in 2016, where they have a very modern facility, and apparently they can produce 2.5 million hectolitres of beer in this place at maximum capacity. But the name Goudale that they use apparently is taken from the name that was given to local ales in the 14th century, so they went with this, the Brasserie Goudale. So as of August 2021, when I'm filming this review for you, these guys have produced around 190 different kinds of beer, and if you go on the website you can see all the different lists of the things that they do. But yeah, that was all the information I was really able to find on this brewery. It was a little bit difficult to kind of piece things together, and it seemed that the best source of information was simply the timeline that they had on the brewery website. Other than that, there wasn't too much information on what happened to the beer, you know, during the Second World War and so on. But yeah, founded just after the First World War, grew over the coming decades, and then took over a few other breweries before being merged into another kind of parent company, if you like. So kind of interesting. But yeah, if you want to learn more about this brewery, you can of course check out the brewery website. You can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn a little bit more about all the different beers that these guys have done. So yeah, interesting. But as we say at the start of the video, I think that's, you can check out all those links, but let's get on and actually have a taste of this beer itself then. So this beer, as you can see, it's actually part of the La Brasseurs de Gayant range, which is a reference to the you know, the Gayant brewery, if you like. But yeah, Landelin, when I looked him up, he was apparently a Belgian brigand who converted to Christianity in the 7th century, and this beer, this line of beers, I guess, is named after him. So the Brigands, I believe, were kind of similar to pagans in a lot of ways. They had very similar beliefs, but I think their gods were named different things, of course, and that was quite common throughout Europe in that particular time period. But yeah, this one is certainly very nicely presented. It's almost like a kind of abbey beer in a sense, and I guess the blonde ales are, you know, sort of abbey beers, and that's probably also why they've used Saint Landelin as well. But he founded Landelin founded a monastery in Hainaut, if I remember correctly from what I read. But yeah, there you can see it's got one of these nice kind of cork tops on it. There you can see Saint-Vincent d'Or, Haut-des-France, so a little regional marking on it there. And yeah, Brasserie en France, so part of the French Brewers Association, I guess, which is kind of cool. But like I said to you, this one is a 6.5% blonde ale. This is a big 750ml bottle, 75 centilitres. I think I paid 70 Swedish kroner for this, so that translates to roughly €7, somewhere in the region of like £6.40, £6.50, something like that, let's say, and I guess somewhere in the region of like $8 American, just for those of you watching over there, potentially a little bit more. But yeah, for a big 6.5% import beer from France, wouldn't say that's too bad at all. So yeah, 6.5% blonde ale, this one. Let's get it out and see how we get on with the tasting. I'm really curious to see what this one has in store for us, and definitely cool to find another slightly older French brewery to review for you here on the channel. I mean, we've been getting things like, you know, Prism and Piggy and a few of the other kind of more modern craft breweries, so cool to get something a little bit more traditional and French as well. And I do actually have another more traditional French beer in the fridge as well, which is a Bière de Gare. So I'm looking forward to reviewing my first French Bière de Gare a little bit later on. So there we go. I was worried that was going to pop, but yeah, you can see on the side there, as I said, on this little thing, it says Bière de Tradition, I guess we could say. And again, I apologise for my bad French pronunciations. I've not studied French since I was, what would that be, about 14 or 15, something like that. So about 15 years or so since I last studied French. Craziness. I would like to give it a go again. I do kind of regret that we kind of took the piss out of the teacher and stuff in our French class. We just weren't interested at that age, you know. But that's just kind of how it goes. I'm a lot more interested in languages these days, of course. So yeah, that's that. That's just how it goes sometimes. But yeah, the Saint Landelin Blanc, 6.5% ABV from Brasserie Goudale in Arques in the Pais-de-Calais region in France. Interesting. So that's certainly looks quite nice, this one, I have to say. So as you can see, this beer has poured quite a rich, it's actually quite a rich golden colour, this one. It's one of the kind of, it's certainly got a wee bit of a kind of biscuity type colour to it, in fact, which is interesting. But you could see when we poured the beer, it poured with about a quarter finger of a frothy white head. That's faded away to be pretty much nothing, though. There's just a sort of thin, wispy layer sitting on top of it, and you can see the nice ring around the edge of the glass there. But the beer itself is crystal clear. If I look at the bottom of the bottle, there doesn't seem to be too much in the way of sediment at the bottom of this one. But yeah, it certainly looks the part of what you would expect of a blonde ale. So in terms of colour, like I say, it's definitely a more kind of rich yellow, this one, rather than being a sort of straight up, kind of straight up bright straw coloured yellow rather than anything else. Definitely a bit more rich. But remember, the colour of your beer is dependent on 1, the type of malts that you use. That determines the magnitude of the colour. 2, the length of your wort boil. The longer you boil the wort, the more the sugars caramelise, and thus you get a darker colour of beer. Yeah, any adjuncts that you put in any barrel aging that you do will affect the colour of the beer also. But when it comes to blonde ales like this, you don't really have to care about those 2 factors. Usually those 2 factors are more at play when it comes to sour beers and things like this. But yeah, it certainly looks the part of a blonde ale, this. I think it will turn out to be very nice. So yeah, definitely one of the kind of richer blonde ales that I've had. But that said, it has been a while since I've had one of these, so take that comment with a bit of a pinch of salt. But nothing overly surprising about this one in terms of its aroma. I think we should take a little, or in terms of appearance I should say, I think it's about time we should take a look at the aroma of this one. Let's go for it then. Keep having these brain farts in the video these days, guys. Early onset Alzheimer's, I swear. But yeah, let's take a look at the aroma of this beer then. Yeah, aroma of this one is very typical for what you would expect of the style, actually. So straight away with this one, you can smell that nice sort of doughy, yeasty backbone that you expect. So the backbone of the beer, it's got a lovely little bit of a kind of white bready character to it. You get that typical kind of banana, bubblegummy sort of thing in there as well. Definitely some sort of clove spice. The blonde ale, of course, is basically the little brother of the Belgian triple, I guess we could say. And you've got the same with the double. The double is the kind of little brother of the quadruple, of course. So yeah, it's kind of interesting in that sense. But this one does smell really quite similar to what you would expect of the likes of Leffe and things. It's the aroma, this one is very kind of typical of the style. Nothing surprising about that. But yeah, backbone of the beer, it's got a little bit of a sort of crackery, bread crusty backbone to it, 1 or 2 little woody undertones in there, a smooth kind of white bready character to it. Within that bready note, you certainly get some more kind of doughy, yeasty elements, some clovey spice as well, and yeah, I do like how that goes together in this one. So yeah, the aroma of this beer, I think, goes together very, very well. But yeah, the aroma with this beer, I think, is pretty nice. The malty, yeasty side of things is good, and I would say that overall it does lean towards that doughy, yeasty, clovey spice kind of note. You do get a wee bit of that more kind of candied bubblegum out of it, which I do like, and then on top of that there's a few wee brown sugary elements. So to me there is certainly a little bit of a kind of straight up caramel to this one, but behind that there's a little bit of sort of honey and a kind of McVitie's digestive biscuit sort of thing. I'm not sure how good a reference that is for French people that will watch this video. I don't know if you get McVitie's digestives in France, come to think of it, but it really reminds me of a sort of biscuity, cookie-ish type thing, actually. So yeah, the aroma on that side of things, with that side of the beer, I think is very, very nice. So it gets a thumbs up from me on the malty kind of side of things. You have to remember as well, with these sort of Belgian style beers, I guess we could say, or the should we say the low country style beers? I'm not sure. But yeah, with the Belgian blonde, as I would call it, what they often do with all of these kind of abbey type beers is they always put a little bit of brew sugar in them during the fermentation, so they often maintain a very light mouthfeel, but it puts the alcohol content up quite considerably. So yeah, that's what they do with the triple, the double, the triple and the quadruple. I'm not sure to what extent they do it with the blonde ales, but I think they do it, and that's what gives you some of the kind of honeyish notes in this one, the sugar that they add into the brew. So yeah, that's worth bearing in mind with these beers. But yeah, on the hoppy side of things, again, it's kind of what you would expect. There's a little bit of a kind of earthiness in the back of the nose, but you get a little bit of a floral character. It's quite noble, actually, in terms of its characteristics. I'm guessing that they probably will use some French hops in this one. There are quite a few varieties of French hops that I'm not overly familiar with. You don't hear too much about French hops, actually. Although one I did find recently that I really loved was Barbe Rouge. Beautiful raspberry flavours out of that. It was absolutely lovely. I think it was a barley wine that I had that in, and it just worked really, really well. But yeah, the green component of this beer is quite nice. It's got a lovely kind of bright floral aromaticity to it, a little bit of a kind of zestier, grassy note in there, and a wee touch of earthy and herbal note towards the back of the nose. But on the fruity side of things, it also works. It also works very, very well. But yeah, the apricot note that you get out of this one is really nice as well. There's quite a bit of dried fruit to this, so you certainly get some kind of sultana out of it. You get a little bit of that dried apricot in there. These things are quite typical of the Belgian blonde style, or the blonde ale style, in my experience. But beyond that, you get a little bit of an oily peary note, and you also get just a wee touch of a kind of appley quality to this one as well. So yeah, the way that everything goes together in this beer, I think, is very nice, actually. So it gets a thumbs up from me, absolutely, in terms of aroma, and in terms of the authenticity of this one too, the authenticity to the style. It certainly has that. But when these guys have been around since 1919, you would expect that from them. But yeah, nothing overly surprising about the aroma of this beer when you consider the style. So yeah, definitely take a bit of time to just ponder it over, get yourself used to it, and do that before you have a taste. That's always half the experience when it comes to craft beer, and a lot of science kind of shows you that a lot of the flavour, of course, in beer comes from the aroma of it. So let's get stuck into this one and just see how we get on. So yeah, this one is the Landelin Blanc, 6.5% blonde ale from the Brasseurs de Gayant range at Brasserie Goudale in Arques in the Pais-de-Calais region in the north of France. Let's get stuck into this one. Slange, skål, cheers, santé. Ooh. First impression of that's certainly one of the sweeter. That is certainly one of the sweeter blonde ales I've come across in quite a wee while. That is really kind of biscuity and honey-like, actually. I like it, I do like it, but it's certainly one of the sweeter blonde ales I've come across. That's nice though. It's very, very drinkable. Actually, it's a really nice kind of session beer, this one. This would be a good sort of table beer, of course. You do, if we're talking about table beer as a specific style, these are usually a little bit lower in alcohol than this. They'll tend to be about 4% or something like that. But yeah, this is one, you could have a few bottles of this on the table and, drink it over an evening. And it would be a nice, sort of glass filler, this one. This is quite a sessionable beer, actually. But yeah, if we're talking about it from a more kind of stylistic sense, it's certainly, as I say, one of the sweeter blonde ales that I've come across in quite some time. So it gets a thumbs up from me, absolutely. Yeah, interesting stuff. So I think this is definitely worth trying. I do like the slightly bigger sweetness that this beer has compared to the other Belgian blondes. I mean, normally the ones that you'd have would be a little bit more kind of bready than this. If you like, you would get a little bit more yeasty character, and this one is certainly a little bit more oily and more kind of slick in a sense. But yeah, it's interesting. I do enjoy it. Let's break the flavour of this one down a little bit then and describe it for you a wee bit more. succinctly. So the backbone of this beer, it's certainly got a little bit of a kind of bread crusty quality, and that goes right across the middle of your palate there. So, as I say, a nice little bit of a kind of bread crusty note just going right across the middle third of your palate. And as you go into the back third of your palate, again you get a little bit of a sort of bread crusty element there too. But sitting on top of that, you've got a nice kind of you do get a nice little bit of a sort of wholemealy, brown bready sort of thing on top of that. There's a little bit of brown bread in there, but on top of that you do get a little bit of a more kind of white bready character as well. So it's quite layered, this one. Bread crust, maybe a little bit of a kind of crackery note in there as well. Brown bread sitting on top of it, then you've got a kind of, you know, softer white bready character to it, which is quite interesting. On top of that though, you get a nice kind of, you can feel the brown sugary elements there. If you go to the dead centre of your palate there, right in the middle third of your tongue, we'll concentrate on that middle third of your palate. In the dead centre of your tongue there, you've certainly got a big sweet caramelly element to this beer. As you move a little bit further out from that, you get a little bit more of a kind of honey type character, and then as you move out towards the extremities of that middle third of your palate, that's where you're getting the more kind of biscuity, McVitie's digestive biscuity sort of elements out of it. So I certainly like how that goes together, absolutely. But yeah, as I say, the biscuity side of this beer is really nice. So in this beer, the further you go into the aftertaste with it, it really does kind of oil, you know, it does really sort of oil up a little bit, and it takes a wee while for these kind of clovey, bubblegummy sort of flavours to come out of this one. And of course these flavours you would associate with the kind of with the yeasty side of these beers, but the yeast comes out on the back third of the palate, so we'll come to that in a minute. But yeah, the middle third of your palate is very, very sweet in this one, and that's, I'm talking, it's not you know, overly sweet generally, but for this style, in my experience, this one is certainly a sweeter example than others I've come across. So this is interesting on that side of things. Let's focus on the back third of the palate then. Let's focus on the back third of your palate. So, onto the back third of your palate then. So, border region between middle third and back third of your palate, you get a little bit of a bready build up there. There's a nice wee bit of a bread crusty quality to it as well, so I can feel that. Then into the you know, as you go into the back third of your palate, again, it's quite layered as it was before, but you can feel that little bit of a kind of bread crusty base. You can feel the brown bready character in there, then you can feel the white bready notes there, but the white bready notes are a bit thicker in this one, and it's within that you can start to feel, that you really start to feel the you know, the kind of clovey spice to the beer. So yeah, certainly a little bit of a kind of clovey spice coming out of this one at this point in time. So yeah, nice kind of clovey element to it. You certainly get a wee bit, as you move further forward back out of that kind of yeasty part of the beer, you can feel there's a wee bit of that kind of bubblegummy, candy sort of note there. It actually sits on top of the kind of border region between middle third and back third of your palate. So that's interesting with this beer too. But yeah, you'll feel on that back third of your palate that the flavour is taller in there. The flavour of this beer on the back third of your palate is certainly taller than some of the other, than, you know, the rest of it. So when you start from the back of your palate there, you can feel the flavour is taller. It condenses down as you come further forward, then it squashes down quite a little bit as you go into the middle third of your palate. So yeah, really interesting how this beer goes about its business, but certainly one of the slightly more slick and crisp and sweet examples of the Belgian blonde that I've come across. I keep saying Belgian blonde in this, it's a French blonde ale, and I'm not sure, you know, let me know about that in the comment section below. Are the French blonde ales a bit sweeter than their Belgian counterparts? You know, the other beer that comes to mind is the Ambré, like the amber beer, the French amber beer. Could it be a little bit more akin to that? Because I know that they are a wee bit sweeter actually. So that's another interesting thought when it comes to this one for sure. But let's focus on the hoppy side of things then. So on the hoppy side of the beer, back corners of the palate, there's a little bit of a smooth earthiness in there. As you move further forward, it gets a little bit herbal, and then as the herbal kind of sort of earthy herbal combination, the smoothness of that pushes further forward, and as you reach the front corners of the palate, the beer is certainly a little bit more kind of floral. You certainly get a little bit more of a floral aromaticity out of this one, but round the front curve of your tongue, it's certainly a little bit kind of lighter. It's certainly a little bit lighter and grassier, I would say. But yeah, I think that goes together very nicely, in fact. But yeah, on the as you go round that front curve of your palate, it does have a little bit of smoothness to it. And again, the way that the green component goes together in this one, that slightly smooth earthiness and the smooth hot herbal character that you get, that does make me wonder if there are French hops in this one, or maybe they're using Belgian hops. I'm not quite sure, but I don't think it's German or Czech hops that are in this. It just the green component just feels a little bit different, and I don't know enough about French or Belgian hops, to be quite honest with you, to guess exactly what variety it would be. But yeah, the green component, I think, is usually, when you're talking about these noble type hops, because it is quite, the hoppy character you get in this one is noble in character, but it's difficult to pinpoint exactly what variety it could be. It might be a combination. Some of the smoothness that you get out of this one and the brightness, it is fairly close to some of the German ones, and I know that there are hop producing regions, I believe, in the east of France, and I guess probably in the north. Well, there's a massive agriculture sector in France, so there's probably hops being produced all over the place. But yeah, the green component in this one, I think, is quite nice, and it sort of adds to the drinkability of this beer overall, I would say. But on the I think we should focus on the fruity side of the beer now. On that front third of your palate, border region between front third and middle third of your palate, you get a wee bit of a bready build up again, a little bit of a kind of bread crusty element to it, and the base, of that front third of your palate is a little bit of a kind of, you do get a wee bit of a kind of bread crusty note in there, and a slightly smoother kind of brown bready quality to it as well. Yeah, but fruity side of this one, I think, does go together very nicely too. You go to the back half of that front third of your palate, there's a wee bit of a, the base of it is kind of, there's a bit of a dried apricot note in there, there's a wee bit of a kind of sultana, there's a wee bit of a kind of sultana type quality to it as well, so quite a bit of dried fruit on the back half of that front third of your palate. But as you move further forward, it gives you a wee bit more of a kind of oily, peary note. Certainly it's a wee bit more oily in the front half of the front third of your tongue, and just behind the front tip of your palate, you certainly get a wee bit of a more kind of slightly, I don't want to say spicy apple, but there is a wee bit more of a kind of appley, zesty kind of character in there, maybe a very slightly limey note, which mixes in with the kind of grassy esters to the beer, and the zestiness of that comes out the further you go into the aftertaste. But I mean, overall, I think this beer is really quite nice. As I say, one of the sweeter examples of the blonde that I've come across before, but I don't know whether that is characteristic of the French blonde beers. I've been comparing this one a lot to the Belgian blondes because that's what I'm familiar with, but it certainly feels more kind of sweet and biscuity compared to the other blonde ales I've had from both Belgium and the Netherlands. I don't know if, I can't think if I've had a blonde ale from France before, actually, so that's another perspective to take on this one. But whatever this beer actually is, I think it is quite nicely done, and as we say, it's always nice to try different things from different places. But I think we've covered the flavour as much as we really can in this one. To round off the review with the mouthfeel then, this beer is, it's kind of top end of light bodied. Carbonation is very, very smooth in this one. It has a real degree of oily kind of slickness to it. Actually, it's quite a slick beer, this. In terms of IBUs and things, I would say that this one is probably 15, 20 IBUs at most. Really low IBU to this beer. The malt base, as we say, has a mix of kind of graininess, breadiness, and a good bit of sweetness to it. I'd say it really leans towards the sweet side of things. You do get a wee bit of spiciness from the yeasty notes as well, the kind of clovey side of things, and you've also got the candied bubblegum in there, but a nice little bit of a kind of oily, fruity character also. And yeah, I certainly do like how this one goes about its business. It gets a thumbs up from me. It's a really nice, slick and sweet example of the Belgian blonde ale, or should we call it the Low Countries blonde ale? I don't know, but certainly let me know about your experiences with the French blonde ales in the comment section below, because I'm pretty sure this is the first French blonde ale that I've had, actually, come to think of it. But the quality of beer in France, in my experience, is very, very good, actually. So I do hope that we continue to see a stream of French beers making their way up here to Scandinavia. I do want to go down to France at some point and do a little bit of out and about filming and just try more of the French craft beers, of course. But yeah, that's all I can really tell you about these guys for the moment. So if you want to learn more, as I say, look at the brewery website, and hopefully we can review a few more of their beers in the future. But yeah, this one was the Saint Landelin Blonde, 6.5% from the Brasseurs de Gayant range from Brasserie Goudale in, I forget the name of the place now, Arques, Arques, in the Pais-de-Calais region, north of France. Interesting beer, this, and I've certainly enjoyed it. So thank you again for watching my reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Brasserie Goudale as well, and we will see about returning to these guys sometime soon. Thank you again for watching. Check out my social media, check out Brasserie Goudale's social media, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Slàinte, skål, cheers. A really lovely, sweet and biscuity blonde ale, this one. Check it out. Slàinte.